In a dramatic escalation of military engagement in the Middle East, President Trump announced that the United States had launched precision strikes on 3 major Iranian nuclear facilities, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, describing the assault as a spectacular military success. The president declared the operation's aim was to eliminate Iran's nuclear enrichment capabilities and neutralize what he labeled the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. On his Truth Social platform, Trump revealed that a full payload of bombs had been dropped on Fordo, Iran's heavily fortified subterranean site, affirming that all U.S. aircraft returned unscathed. During a nationally televised address from the White House, Trump, flanked by Vice President JD Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, proclaimed that the targeted facilities had been completely and totally obliterated. He cautioned Iran to pursue peace in its conflict with Israel, warning that alternative outcomes would bring far more devastating consequences. Trump emphasized the potential for future attacks, declaring, "Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes." His tone underscored a strategy rooted in overwhelming strength, coupled with an implicit invitation to negotiate. Iran, which had previously vowed to retaliate if the United States intervened in Israel's campaign, responded by launching drone and missile attacks on Israeli cities. In response, Trump issued a stern post on social media warning that any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. According to CBS News, 3 B-2 bombers conducted the attack on Fordo using GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, formidable weapons capable of penetrating deeply buried targets. Meanwhile, U.S. submarines deployed Tomahawk missiles against the other 2 facilities. Although the operation was intensely destructive, U.S. diplomatic channels reached out to Iranian leadership beforehand to signal that no further military action or regime change was planned. However, not all U.S. regional allies were notified in advance, with some only learning of the strike as the aircraft were en route. Despite the magnitude of the strikes, the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency reported no increase in radiation levels following the attacks. Within the region, President Trump's actions garnered support from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who praised them as an embodiment of peace through strength. Iranian state media acknowledged the strikes, with spokespersons confirming that all 3 nuclear sites had been hit. Nevertheless, Iran's Atomic Energy Organization declared that the attacks would not derail its nuclear ambitions. The organization urged the global community to condemn the strikes as violations of international norms. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi responded defiantly in a Sunday Morning Post, affirming Iran's right under the United Nations Charter to defend its sovereignty, interests, and people, leaving little doubt that tensions were far from resolved. Iran had sought to deter Donald Trump from joining Israel's bombing campaign with dire threats of retaliation, but its options now are limited and fraught with risk. Iranian officials have said specifically that U.S. ships and military bases would be targeted, but much of the capacity it had relied on as a deterrent has been stripped away over the past few days by Israeli strikes. Those strikes, however, have focused on long-range ballistic missile launchers. Iran still has a formidable arsenal of shorter-range missiles and drones. The U.S. has taken precautions over the past few weeks, dispersing its naval presence in the region and beefing up air defenses, to try to ensure it presents as hard a target as possible. Furthermore, Trump warned of broader U.S. involvement in Israel's war if Iran attempts to strike back, and in recent days suggested that one of the targets for U.S. bombers would be the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Iran's other principal weapon, built up over decades, is its network of alliances with regional militias, its axis of resistance, but that too has been depleted. Hezbollah's extensive missile arsenal was pulverized by the Israeli Air Force last year. Israeli planes have returned to keep the Lebanese Shia force in check, bombing an alleged missile stockpile in South Beirut in April. A Tehran-backed Shia militia in Iraq, Kataib Hezbollah, has threatened to target U.S. interests in the Middle East in response to Washington's participation in Israel's support. One of its commanders, Abu Ali al-Askari, was quoted on CNN as saying that U.S. bases in the region will become akin to duck hunting grounds. The United States has military facilities across at least 19 sites across the Middle East, 8 of them permanent. Another Iranian partner, the Houthi forces in Yemen, agreed a ceasefire with the U.S. in May, but they have warned they would regard the truce to be broken if Trump decided to take part in attacks on Iran, and would target U.S. ships in the Red Sea, something the Houthis have done with mixed results in the past. The entry of any of these militias into the war would draw a devastating response from the U.S., which has been preparing for just such a contingency over the months that Israel has been preparing its attack. Iran also has the option of attacking shipping, with the ultimate option of using mines, sinking vessels, or issuing credible threats to close the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow gateway to the Persian Gulf just 55 kilometers wide in some places, through which over a fifth of the world's oil supply, 20 million barrels, and much of its liquefied gas, passes each day. Hardline Iranian politicians have called for the strait to be closed over the past few days. It has the advantage of being a means to impose a direct cost on Trump, as it would trigger an oil price spike with a near-immediate inflationary effect in the U.S. ahead of congressional elections next year. But it would also be an act of dramatic economic self-harm. Iranian oil uses the same gateway, and shutting Hormuz risks bringing Gulf Arab states, who have been highly critical of the Israeli attack, into the war to safeguard their own interests.
Niner 67, QNH 1005, pressure altitude plus 266, density altitude minus 8 Niner 1.
Leading edge right, set for takeoff, co-pilot.
Leading edge left, 3030 white box, set for takeoff, pilot.
Let me know if that happens while we're rolling, or you want me to take the takeoff?
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay. KV4 on the range.
Roger. He definitely pushed way late.
Pickle. Rotate.
Quit 604 Heavy, Lincoln needs departure, radar, contact traffic, service climb, maintain block flight level 180-2190.
Coming up.
Quid 604 flight, continuing climb, 18 block 19.
604 Heavy, unable to stay current altitude and flight conditions to include bases and tops.
Lincoln Quid 604 flight clouds. Cloud layer bottoms are at 4,500, still in the clouds.
Gear up.
604, roger. Stay current altitude.
Quid 604 currently 5,000, correction at flight level 50.
That checks, thanks.
If you get a chance, can you give me that?
Out of the clouds, cloud tops at flight level 055.
Control.
Quid 604 Heavy, roger, there, layers above.
Fly off the deck, 0.
Quid 604 negative.
Copy. Quid 604 Heavy, climb, maintain block flight level 160 to 170, Swaniga sign. It's Bravo 170.
Quid 604 flight 16 block 17.
Cleared lower. We're currently in a right-hand turn to build spacing. We have to separate 10 miles. Can you give me a endurance speed, please?
Banner control, quit 604 flight.